Sufi order. A committee of experts scrutinised all of his works and gave a favourable report. Bediuzzaman presented a masterly defence. On the 16th of June 1944, Denizli Court ruled they should be acquitted. Decision number 199/136. This was ratified by the Appeal Court on the 30th of December 1945 and made final. Bediuzzaman and a number of his students were released after spending 9 months in prison, but previously to this, Bediuzzaman was injected with poison and went into a coma, and all hope for his life was lost. At that point, the late Hafiz Ali implored Allah Almighty, saying, "O Lord, take me in his place." This sincere prayer found acceptance, for soon afterwards Hafiz Ali himself fell ill and died in the place of Bediuzzaman. Almighty Allah restored Bediuzzaman to health. While in Denizli prison, Bediuzzaman wrote mekke risale-i, the fruits of belief, on 2 Fridays. Many of the prisoners were reformed on reading the treatise. When he was released from the prison, Bediuzzaman was ordered by Ankara to reside in Emirdağ. He was released in June 1944, when Denizli Court gave the decision for their acquittal, and then spent 2 months in the Şehir Hotel. He was sent to Emirdağ in August, when the orders came from Ankara. In Emirdağ, Bediuzzaman was under constant surveillance, and he was prevented from having visitors. If he went out into the countryside, he was followed by police and gendarmes. One time he was approached by an official who, in domineering and insulting fashion, demanded to know why he was wearing a turban. The official took him to the police station, where he was ill-treated. He said that he suffered in 1 day in Emirdağ what he had suffered in a month in Denizli prison. On another occasion, he put some food on the windowsill overnight so that it would not go off. Someone put poison in it, which made Bediuzzaman extremely ill. He was saved from certain death by saintly influence of the prayers Joshan al-Kabir, Sakina, and Salawat for the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. On the 23rd of December 1947, Bediuzzaman was arrested in Emirdağ and put in Afyon prison. On the 6th of December 1947, Afyon Criminal Court sentenced him on the basis of no firm evidence to 20 months imprisonment. The case was sent to the Appeal Court, which ruled that since Bediuzzaman Said Nursi has been acquitted of the same charges by Denizli Court, even if the previous judgment was in error, since it has been ratified by the Appeal Court, the case cannot be retried. It quashed Afyon Court's ruling. Nevertheless, Afyon Court decided to retry the case. The defendants demanded that the Appeal Court's decision be complied with, but on the pretext of completing some deficiencies in the case, the court put the case up for re-examination. The re-examination continued for months. Having served the full 20 months of his original sentence, which had been quashed, Bediuzzaman was released from Afyon prison on the 20th of September 1949. These last 3 or 4 years have been truly torturous for Bediuzzaman. No man of learning had been before exposed to such an illegal repression. They made him suffer in Afyon in 1 day what he had endured in a month in Denizli. In the most intensively cold days of winter, when everything was frozen up, he was left alone and untended in a large ward, most of the windows of which were without panes of glass. There was no heating of any sort. He was again injected with poison. For months he lay ill from the effects of the poison, so weak he lacked even the strength to turn from side to side. No one was permitted to come to attend him, yet he endured all the torments in patience, never cursing those responsible. Moreover, he continued to write the risale-i. It was in this prison that he wrote the piece entitled El Hujjat Zera, the Shining Proof. He also delivered his celebrated defence in Afyon Court, which, containing sublime truths, made history in court defences. He wrote the supplement for the Appeal Court. He sent petitions, statements and declaration to the Directorate of Religious Affairs, and to the government and its ministries, and to the police. Throughout his imprisonment, he wrote highly valuable letters and notes to his students, setting out rules of conduct and offering them advice. Parts of all these are included in the 12th, 13th and 14th rays. On the 20th of November 1949, Bediuzzaman arrived in Emirdağ for the second time. Here he wrote letters to the risale-i students that should be inscribed in gold. They are included in the work Emir Da La Hikayesi. Bediuzzaman stayed for around 2 years in Emir Da. Up until 1950, he had not been permitted to go anywhere from his place of compulsory residence, even to a village. Then, in 1951, he went to Eskişehir and stayed for 1.5 months in the Yildiz Hotel, meeting there with the risale-i students. He moved on from there to Isparta, where he remained for about 2.5 months when he was summoned to Istanbul to the trial connected with his work, Gençlik Rehberi, a guide for youth. He arrived there in January 1952. The case had been brought in connection with the printing by a number of students in Istanbul of a guide for youth, under Article 163 of the Criminal Code. The trial was held in Istanbul Criminal Court. Bediuzzaman himself offered a splendid defence, as did the 3 defence lawyers. At the second hearing, on the 5th of March 1952, the court ruled that the defendants should be acquitted. A short time later, Bediuzzaman returned to Emir Da in the summer of the following year, 1953. He moved to Isparta. Bediuzzaman stated that in the event of his death, he wished to be buried either in the village of Sav or in Barla. He rented a house in Isparta and, together with 4 or 5 of his students, transformed it into a risale-i dershane, or study centre. Although he occasionally visited other places, this was where Bediuzzaman now stayed until he set out on his final journey to Urfa. The Afyon Court case continued for 8 years. The appeal court quashed Afyon Court's ruling that all copies of the risale-i should be seized and confiscated, following which the decision was taken to resubmit it to the scrutiny of the committee of experts made up of members of the Consultative Council of the Directorate of Religious Affairs. On their producing a very favourable report, Afyon Court ruled that the books should be returned to their owners. Thus, Bediuzzaman and his students were overjoyed to claim back their books, confiscated years before. In 1958, the risale-i was printed for the first time in Ankara. Sözler, the words, Mektubat, letters, Lemala, the flashes collection, Tarhije Hayat, Bediuzzaman's biography, and all the parts of the risale-i were by degrees printed first in Ankara and then in Istanbul. Bediuzzaman said about this printing and publication, "This is the risale-i's festival. I am happy now to depart for the hereafter." Bediuzzaman revisited Barla, where the risale-i had first been written, after 25 years. He relived his 8 years there and saw before him his loyal friends and helpers of that time. He saw once again the places he had received divine effusions and inspiration. He could not hold back the tears when he drew close to the Madrasa Nuriya, his home of 8 years, and he wept to see it again. He embraced the blessed plane tree which stands outside it, where he would offer prayers and supplications to the light of morning, and watered it with his tears. In 1959, Bediuzzaman visited Ankara at the request of his students and stayed for 3 days in the Beirut Palace Hotel. He called together his leading students and gave them his last instructions. He came again to Ankara a few months later and stayed in a rented house in the Bahçeevler district. This time he was visited by many deputies from the National Assembly, who sought his advice on a number of questions from the Islamic point of view. He visited Istanbul a month or 2 later. He did not remain there long. 2 months before his death, that is in February 1960, he came again to Ankara, but the Menderes government was irresolute in the face of the opposition shouts of political reaction, and they turned him back at Gölbaşı. Bediuzzaman was upset at this, and said it was an unfortunate decision as far as they were concerned, and he returned to Emir Da and went to Isparta. Several days later, he set out on his final journey to Urfa, on the night of the 23rd of March 1960, that is, the 25th Ramadan 1379. Bediuzzaman departed this life to the eternal realm and the mercy of the Most Merciful. May Allah Almighty have mercy on him and allow us to profit from his spiritual effulgence. Amen. In veneration of the Lord of the Messengers. On the 12th of July 1960, his grave was broken open and his blessed remains transported by aeroplane to an unknown spot.